So one of the most common questions I get asked is, Brad, when are you going to get rid of those plastic bumpers on your Jeep? Well, it finally happened, guys. Today I'm going to give you a very close, detailed look at these brand new Poison Spyder Bruiser bumpers that I've got for the front and the rear. And then I'm going to show you how the install went. But I didn't have the instructions, so I had a couple challenges along the way. Stay tuned. Welcome to TrailRecon. I'm Brad, and today I'm really excited to share with you guys these brand new Poison Spyder Bruiser bumpers, front and rear, that I have on my Jeep now. Man, it's just been such a long time coming. You know, my good friends over at Northridge 4x4 worked with the folks over at Poison Spyder to get me these pre-production bumpers so I could share them with you, and then you can make a decision on whether or not this is something you want to add to your Jeep. Now, if you want to order these, you can go over to Northridge 4x4 right now and pre-order them, and I will leave a link in the description. You know, the guys over at Northridge 4x4, man, great customer service, and they've got great prices. I love working with those guys, so go check them out. Now, let's talk about these bumpers. What I really love about this front bumper, aside from the fact that it's not plastic, because, you know, the plastic bumpers were grayed out and they were chewed up and they were just getting nasty, man. It was time to get rid of them. But this thing just looks great. And look, I can now recess my winch, right? So it comes with a winch plate, and I can lay my winch down there, which gives me a nice clean look. And now the airflow is going to go into my engine bay unabated, which is really nice. This is made out of 3/16 steel, so this thing is rock solid, and they did such a great job with the design. You know, it's not just some block bumper. It actually has some nice looks and lines to it. You know, it goes from one end of the grill to the other, and I love the lines of it. They really did a great job, and it's got some nice clearance, right? So now we got clearance with our tires. We're gonna nice ground clearance, and it's perfect. Now, the bull bar has got these gussets on here. Man, this thing is rock solid, and it just looks great. The recovery mounts on here is really cool because they've welded them not just on the outside, but also internally, giving them some extra strength. And then you can see right here, guys, is there's a square hole that's recessed that you can mount some cube LEDs in there, which is really cool because that really gives you a bunch of different options. Now in here, I've got some KC G34s, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the video, but really gives you a lot of options about what lights you want to put in there. And the bumpers have been powder coated in a semi-gloss, what they call their Poison Spyder outer shell, which is really nice. I just love the look of these bumpers. Now, they do offer a skid plate for the front bumper, which I think that's something that I might get later on when that comes out. And the rear bumper has such a nice design. You know, it just looks so much cleaner back there. They've raised up the trailer hitch so they get a little bit of extra clearance, and they have an option for adding their tire carrier later, so it's modular if you want to add that, which is a really cool feature. And you've got the same square lights, so you can add those as well. I think it's really nice. Just a great looking set of bumpers here, guys. Now, I mentioned that these bumpers are pre-production, which means they're still refining them a little bit before they finally release them out to you guys. Also, I didn't get a set of instructions with these, so I had to kind of figure out the install on my own. I didn't do everything just perfectly, and I'm sure if I had the instructions, I would have done things a little differently, but I'll share those with you. You know, I had a couple challenges, and that's just life, but here's how the install went. All right, before I rip off the old bumper, I just want to take a minute and talk about this stock stubby bumper that I have here, because I get questions on Instagram about it all the time. So what happened was, when I installed my new bead locks, they have a 3.5-inch back spacing. And so every time I would turn the wheels at full turn, I was getting rubs on the end of the bumper. And so 3 days before the Rubicon, I was like, man, I cannot go out there with that. I got out the hacksaw and I just cut these off. And it's not a very clean look. I don't like it at all. Plus the bumper has never really been secured, and it's already started to gray out. So getting rid of this plastic bumper is gonna be really nice. Plus what I really like is we're gonna take this winch, and it's now gonna be recessed into the bumper, which is really gonna be such a clean look. I'm really excited to do this. Let's get this thing off and get the new one installed. The first order of business was to disconnect my winch from the battery and then pull all the cables through so we could actually unbolt it. And then there are 8 18mm bolts that are holding the bumper on to the frame rail that need to come off, just 4 on each side, pretty straightforward. Then you're going to have to wrestle with the fog light plugs and pulling all the pins that are holding the wire loom to the bumper. Once you get those off, you're free and clear. Then lastly, just unbolt my winch plate and pull the entire winch right off. All right, now that we've got everything removed, the first thing we need to do before we can put the winch plate and the bumper on is to relocate this vacuum pump. They supply a bracket here, so there's two 10mm bolts. We're going to pop this off, and this bracket's just going to fit right underneath the sway bar, and then there's a spacer on the other side. It should be pretty simple. All right, there's a little wire harness here that's just got some plastic clips. And pull that off, loosen that up, and then there's one wire. Then there's a vacuum tube here on the bottom, and then this guy with the green tabs on it should just pop right off. There it is. Got that off. Should just pop right out of there. Bam. Okay. With the vacuum pump removed, now we're going to turn our attention to the sway bar. Now there's a bracket holding the sway bar to the frame rail that has two 16mm bolts, and we need to remove those. This is going to allow us to slide the vacuum pump bracket that I'll show you here in a minute in between this bracket and the frame rail. Now this bracket is going to bolt to the top of the vacuum pump, and then the whole thing will slide up under that little space that we just created between the bracket and the frame rail. All right, we're all set to reinstall the vacuum onto our new vacuum plate, and that's just going to go up underneath it like that, and then all the hoses will come in. Now, just so you know, I had to trim about 3 plastic tabs and zip ties to get enough extension here to reach the vacuum. So we've got it all. Let's just get this mounted up. And here's what it looks like after it's all bolted up and everything's been reconnected. Just take a little time and use some zip ties and kind of clean up the wires. Give it a nice organized look. Now on the passenger side sway bar bracket, we're going to remove those 16mm nuts, and we're going to slide in a little spacer plate that's going to level everything out for us. All right, we're in the home stretch and almost ready to install the bumper, but first I want to go ahead and put my LED lights in there. What I have are some cube lights from KC. These are their G34 LED lights. These are a perfect fit and they look great, and they're going to put out a lot of light. I will do a full-blown review of these later on. Let's get these installed and get this bumper on. And Poison Spyder did a great job of putting in these little base plates that allows you to just bolt your LED right up to it. It was a very simple install. Okay, I mentioned earlier in the video that I didn't have the directions for this install. And when it was time to test fit the Poison Spyder winch plate in between the two frame rails, the original vacuum pump bracket was in the way. I had to make a choice on whether to cut the bracket or trim down the winch plate, and I chose the latter. However, cutting the vacuum plate is preferred method here. And getting the winch plate to fit in between the frame rails is a pretty tight fit, so having a rubber mallet and giving it a little persuasion is helpful. Alright guys, here's where we're going to take this little backing plate, and it's going to go down in this little groove here. It's going to give us a bolt here that's been welded on to screw into right through the winch plate. So that's going to slide down. Alright, you live and learn. Easier to install this without the winch on there. I figured it'd be easier just because there's a little bit of clearance issues, but you know what, there's not. And getting to these bolts with the winch in there is terrible. So install your winch plate without the winch on. Don't do what I did. So that's alright, we're going to get this done. Alright, these spacers need to go in between the frame rail and the winch plate. So we're just going to slide those up there. I hope they hold, but if they don't hold, then I'm just going to get a little tape and tape them up there. There we go, that'll work. Here we go, the moment I've been waiting for all day. Let's see if she lines up. Now, first thing I want to do is get these white cords through the square holes here. They're not pinching off on anything. Hey, look at there. Sits on its own. Nice. Similar to the old bumper, there are 8 bolts that connect the bumper to the frame rails. Once those are secured, then there's a few bolts on top that attach the bumper to the winch plate. And here's the finished product. Man, I am so pleased with how this turned out. And now it's time to get rid of this grayed out plastic bumper. Now there are a total of 6 bolts, 2 on each side that attach to this bracket, and then there are 2 in the center that need to come off, and then you can just kind of finagle the bumper and rip it right off. And here's some quick side-by-side shots of the old bumper and the new one. You can see that the new bumper just has a lot nicer style to it. Plus, we've got a little bit extra clearance, which is going to be really nice. Now I'm going to remove the brackets that the bumper was bolted to, and I'm also going to remove the recovery hook and take off the trailer hitch. All right, we've got everything taken off. We're ready to put the bumper on, but there's just something about putting a nice, brand new, clean bumper on all this dirt and mess. So forgive me for a second, guys. I just got to clean this up, and then we'll zip tie this up. Ready to get it installed. This is pretty easy. All right, guys, so here's the reality of things. So there's these large 1/2-inch bolts that have to go through the cross member here. And while it goes through perfect on the passenger side, it doesn't go through on the driver's side because actually we have to drill a hole on the bottom, which requires a very large 1/2-inch drill bit, which I do not have. So that means tomorrow I'm going to go to the hardware store, pick one up, and I'll have to do this later. But I'm going to get this mounted. So we're going to mount this with the frame rail, with the 3 bolts just on the side. That will be just fine. And I'm going to skip this part right now for the video, but just know, guys, that you're going to have to mount these bolts through the cross member into the bumper, and you are going to have to drill a hole. Easy day. Now there are 2 clips included, one that's going to go on each side of the frame rail, and they have a threaded side on them that's going to allow one of the bolts to screw right into it. Now here's where I'm going to laugh at myself just a little. So I have installed a few rear bumpers in the past, and it's always been a 2-person job to hold the bumper in place while you're putting the bolts in. Because it was just me, I thought I was being clever by using the jack to kind of assist me to hold this in place. Well, come to find out, I didn't need it. When you set the bumper on the frame rail, yeah, it sits there all by itself on its own. It really is just a one-man job. You don't need the jack. Now you're going to need a little elbow grease to get this bumper to fit. It's a nice snug fit, which is really good. But a little bit of maneuvering back and forth, side to side, and even a rubber mallet, it'll get all lined up and you can get those bolts in no problem. Now this bumper is modular and allows you to add Poison Spyder's tire carrier if you want, but if you don't have that, it does include a little plug that just pops right in. And you can see here on the rear of the bumper that there's some cutouts, just like there was on the front bumper, to mount some LED lights, and I'll be doing that down the road. But man, I am really, really pleased with how this turned out. I just think it looks so nice. So not a bad install at all, and I think just about anybody with some basic hand tools can knock that out in their garage on a weekend, no problems. And look, no more plastic bumpers, guys. These things are awesome. I love the way they look, and I love the quality of the Poison Spyder. Let me know what you think about the bumpers in the comment. I'd love to hear about it. And hey, look, what'd you think about the install? I mean, it didn't go perfect, but it went pretty well. I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. Look, if you haven't subscribed to TrailRecon, please hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you as a member of the TrailRecon team. And if you'd like to see what's going on when I'm not making videos, head over to Instagram and follow me on Instagram. I'm posting stuff over there all the time, guys. Thanks for watching.